My beloved child, do not swipe away. Stay with these words for a little longer than your doubts tell you to. Something has been quietly unfolding behind the curtain of your life, and what you are about to hear arrived at the exact moment your heart was ready to receive it. You may think you chose this message, but there are moments when a soul is gently guided toward a truth it could not have discovered on its own. Listen carefully, because every sentence carries another piece of a story that has been moving toward you for far longer than you realize. There is someone whose life has been shaken by decisions that were never supposed to define them forever. Someone whose heart learned how heavy silence can become when promises lose their meaning. Someone who stood in rooms where words were spoken that sounded final, while deep inside they still wondered whether endings could ever become beginnings. You do not know every chapter of their story. You have not seen the nights they questioned their own worth. You have not heard the prayers they whispered when no one else remained awake. But heaven heard every one of them. There is something extraordinary about to be revealed. Not because it changes who you are, but because it changes how you understand everything that has been delayed. Your soulmate has been walking through one of the most difficult seasons of their life. There were documents placed before them, signatures requested, memories revisited, dreams that once seemed permanent slowly folded into painful reality. To everyone watching from the outside, it looked like a legal process. To their soul, it felt like standing between the person they used to be and the person they were afraid they might become. The divorce hearing was expected to close one chapter. No one imagined it would quietly unlock another. There was an unexpected turn. Not the kind the world celebrates with loud applause, the kind that happens inside a heart, the kind no courtroom can record, the kind that changes destiny without anyone realizing it in the moment. Before that day arrived, they carried themselves like someone who had forgotten what hope sounded like. They smiled because it was easier than explaining exhaustion. They answered questions without revealing the weight hidden beneath every ordinary conversation. People assumed they were moving on. Very few understood they were simply surviving. Survival can look remarkably similar to strength. But heaven knows the difference. And so do the angels assigned to watch over broken promises until healing finally arrives. You have spent your own nights wondering why certain prayers remained unanswered. Perhaps you questioned why every connection seemed to teach another painful lesson. Perhaps you wondered whether genuine love still existed somewhere beyond disappointment. Perhaps you quietly accepted the idea that life would always require you to settle for less than what your heart secretly longed for. Yet while those thoughts occupied your mind, another soul was standing at the edge of one of the most defining moments of their journey. The timing was never random. Nothing meaningful ever is. There were countless opportunities for them to become bitter. Many expected them to. After all, disappointment often convinces people that hardness is wisdom. But something unusual happened. Instead of allowing pain to close their heart forever, they asked a question, not aloud, not dramatically, simply within themselves. What if this ending is making room for something I cannot see yet? That single question echoed farther than they understood. Questions born from sincerity always travel beyond the limits of ordinary understanding. And that question began moving pieces neither they nor you could see. The hearing approached. Every detail seemed predictable. Lawyers prepared their words, schedules were arranged, documents organized, faces rehearsed expressions that had become familiar through months of emotional exhaustion. Everything appeared ordinary, yet the unseen realm recognized that this day carried a different weight. There are moments when destiny does not announce itself with thunder. Sometimes it arrives through a pause, a glance, a sentence spoken without intention, a realization no one expected. This was one of those moments. Before anyone entered that room, your soulmate looked at their reflection. Not because they admired what they saw, because they barely recognized the person staring back. They searched their own eyes for the version of themselves that once believed forever meant forever. They wondered whether that person still existed. They wondered whether trust could ever return. They wondered whether love had become something meant only for other people. They did not know. Even as those thoughts crossed their mind, someone else's future was already quietly connected to theirs. Your future. There are connections that begin long before two people meet, not because every detail is predetermined, but because healing often prepares hearts to recognize one another in ways unhealed hearts cannot. If both of you had crossed paths earlier, you might have admired one another, you might have appreciated one another, but you would not have truly understood one another. Understanding is expensive. It costs tears. It costs patience. It costs letting go of versions of ourselves that could never carry the future we were created to experience. Your soulmate was paying that price. So were you, even if neither of you realized it. Inside the courtroom, conversations unfolded exactly as expected. Voices remained measured, procedures continued, questions were answered, signatures appeared where they were required. Nothing seemed unusual. Until one unexpected moment interrupted everything. There was a silence, brief, almost forgettable. Most people would never remember it. Yet that silence stretched farther than anyone in the room could measure, because during those few quiet seconds, your soulmate stopped resisting reality, not surrendering to despair, surrendering to truth. There is a profound difference. For months they had been fighting what had already ended, not because they wanted to remain trapped, but because letting go felt like admitting failure. Then suddenly, something shifted, not outside, inside. A peaceful certainty settled where fear had been living. It was unfamiliar, gentle, impossible to explain. Without knowing why, they quietly released what they had been carrying. No dramatic speech, no visible miracle. Only an invisible burden finally placed down. That moment changed everything, not because circumstances instantly improved. Because their spirit became available for a future they had unknowingly resisted. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not receiving something new. Sometimes it is finally releasing what no longer belongs in your hands. You know this feeling more than you admit. There have been relationships you mourned long after everyone else expected you to move on. There were conversations you replayed endlessly, hoping different words might somehow rewrite history. There were mornings you smiled while secretly carrying yesterday's disappointments. You became skilled at pretending healing had already happened. But deep inside, certain rooms of your heart remained locked, not because you wanted them closed, because you feared what opening them might require. Your soulmate understood that feeling without ever meeting you. Isn't that remarkable? Two strangers, separated by distance, living entirely different lives, yet learning exactly the same lesson. That is how unseen preparation often works. It teaches similar truths through different experiences until two journeys become capable of meeting. There is another detail no one has told you. On the day of that hearing, someone unexpectedly spoke words that lingered long after everyone left. They were not addressed directly to your soulmate. In fact, the speaker probably forgot saying them within minutes, but those words pierced through years of emotional exhaustion. They heard this simple sentence: "Sometimes losing the wrong future is how you finally discover the right one." No one applauded. No music played, life continued, yet inside them, everything became strangely quiet, quiet enough to hear hope returning. Hope rarely arrives shouting. It whispers, it waits, it gently asks permission to stay. That whisper followed them home. Days passed, then weeks. Something subtle began changing. They laughed without forcing it. They noticed beauty they had overlooked. They found themselves looking toward tomorrow instead of constantly revisiting yesterday. Healing had begun, not completely, but undeniably, and then, without warning, you entered their awareness, not physically, not yet, perhaps through an unexpected conversation, perhaps through a fleeting encounter, perhaps through a name, perhaps through a moment so ordinary that neither of you realized its importance. Yet something happened. Your presence reached them before your story did. They could not explain why. They simply knew. Some people leave impressions. Others leave echoes. You became an echo inside their thoughts. Not because they understood you, because your spirit carried something unexpectedly familiar: peace, real peace, not perfection, not performance, peace that survives storms. They noticed it immediately, ironically. You did not. You were busy questioning whether anyone truly saw you. You wondered if your kindness mattered, if your loyalty had any value, if your quiet heart had become invisible in a noisy world. While those doubts occupied your attention, someone else was quietly noticing the very qualities you assumed had gone unseen. There is a strange mystery about authentic souls. They often underestimate the light they carry. They become so accustomed to surviving darkness that they forget how brightly they continue shining. Your soulmate noticed that light, even before understanding its source. They tried dismissing the feeling. They told themselves they were imagining things. They reminded themselves they needed time. They insisted they were not ready to care again, yet every attempt to ignore what they sensed only made it stronger. Some truths become louder each time we try to silence them. Have you ever wondered why certain people remain in your thoughts long after logic suggests they should disappear? It is not always because you know them. Sometimes it is because your spirit recognized something your mind has not caught up to yet. That recognition unsettled them, because after everything they endured, feeling anything again seemed dangerous. Hope can be terrifying after heartbreak. Trust feels risky. Joy feels temporary. Love feels impossible. Yet despite every reason to close their heart, something quietly continued opening it, not all at once, slowly, like dawn refusing to hurry. There is something else, something almost no one knows. On the evening after the hearing, They spoke a prayer unlike any they had prayed before. It was not asking for another relationship. It was not asking for revenge. It was not asking for explanations. Instead they whispered, "If there is still someone meant to walk beside me, prepare both of us before our paths ever cross." That prayer carried extraordinary sincerity, because for the first time, they desired healing more than companionship. Do you understand how significant that is? Many people seek love to escape loneliness. Very few seek wholeness before love. That decision changed the direction of everything. At almost the same time, you found yourself questioning why life kept delaying certain answers. You looked around and wondered whether everyone else was moving forward while you remained standing still. Comparison quietly stole your peace. Impatience whispered lies that sounded convincing. It told you that forgotten dreams never return, that delayed blessings never arrive, that meaningful love belongs only to stories. But impatience never tells the whole truth, because unseen preparation is almost always mistaken for absence. Seeds buried beneath soil appear lifeless. Yet hidden growth is already underway. The same has been happening with your journey. While you measured visible progress, invisible transformation continued. The pieces neither of you could control began aligning. Old attachments loosened, unexpected opportunities appeared, conversations occurred that seemed insignificant, routes changed, schedules shifted, decisions were made that felt ordinary. None of them were meaningless. Every small choice quietly moved both of your stories toward a meeting neither of you could force. The angels watching over these moments never rushed them, because rushed healing often creates fragile foundations. Hearts that have truly healed recognize one another differently. They no longer chase what sparkles, they cherish what brings peace. Your soulmate reached that place, and slowly, so have you. But there is one detail still hidden. One unexpected event from the divorce hearing that no one understood at the time, not the lawyers, not the witnesses, not even your soulmate. A seemingly insignificant interruption occurred during those proceedings. It lasted only moments. Most people dismissed it completely, yet that interruption set into motion a chain of events that would eventually place your lives on the same path. No one recognized its importance then, not even heaven revealed its full meaning immediately, because some revelations lose their power when they arrive before the heart is prepared. Now the time is approaching, the forgotten interruption, the unexpected face, the single decision made in those ordinary moments. All of it connects directly to a truth about your own future that you have never imagined, and when that hidden connection is finally revealed, you will understand why what looked like someone else's ending was quietly becoming the first page of a story that has been moving toward you all along. My beloved child, do not allow your heart to race ahead of this moment. There are truths that must unfold like the rising of the morning sun. If they arrived all at once, their meaning would be lost beneath the weight of surprise. So remain here with me a little longer. Because what seemed like a forgotten detail is about to become the thread that ties together years of unanswered questions. The interruption during your soulmate's divorce hearing was so ordinary that almost everyone ignored it. A folder was misplaced, a brief recess was called, people shifted in their seats, someone stepped into the hallway. It looked insignificant, Life is filled with moments that appear too small to matter, yet you have learned, have you not, that rivers begin with drops of rain, and towering forests begin with seeds no larger than a fingertip. Great changes often disguise themselves as ordinary moments.